Shubhi, are you here? Have you joined us?
Yes, I'm here, Nuri. Good
Uh,
morning.
but I made a mess up right now. I have made you the host and I can't make any modifications to my screen.
Okay, let me make you the host and then you can change it later. Is it okay now? So now it
Yes.
says that multiple participants can share simultaneously.
Okay. So can you share your, yeah, we can see you now. And Sneha has joined us. Are you with us, Sneha?
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay. So perhaps we can start now.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. A very good afternoon to everyone who has joined us today. Today is the third part of the lecture series that we have organized as a part of the 3-month certificate course on functional English and communicative skills. I, Sneha Singh from the Department of English, welcome everyone. To deliver today's lecture, we have with us today our resource person, Dr. Shubhi Misra, who shall deliver a lecture on the topic Borderscape, an interdisciplinary approach to literary texts. To formally introduce her and welcome her, I now ask our in charge, Dr. Fatima Noori, to kindly take over.
Thank you, Sneha. Shubhi Sneha has joined us this particular year, and she's a darling of our students in the department. She's still pursuing her research from the University of Allahabad, but she's become a really good teacher and very favorite amongst our students. So let's get to business now. I introduce this concept to our students because ours is a very small but a very active college in the sense that our students are very much interested in all kinds of activities. Jagataran is basically known for its cultural activities and for immense sports and dances and debates and intercollegiate competitions that goes on. So and we have a lot of civil services aspirants, a lot of students who are very much interested in in the higher education and bringing a change in the society. And during my discussions with you, I realized that I am from core English literature field, but in the postmodern and the post-colonial world that we are living, I realize that literature has much more tentacles and many more dimensions than we at the Department of English try to introduce our students. The BA syllabus that is with us is a very has a lot of canonical British and American literature, and even the Indian literature that we introduce to our students is you know quite sticking to what the syllabus should be. But during my discussions with Shubhi, and this was one of the reasons I became very interested in Shubhi's work, was uh, she was analyzing these literary texts that we were so fond of and reading, and basically the partition and the border literature that is available to us. स्टूडेंट्स जब आप मास्टर्स करेंगे तो हमारे पास एक पेपर है जो कि हम पार्टीशन का पढ़ते हैं, डिपार्टमेंट ऑफ इंग्लिश ने प्रिस्क्राइब कर रखा है. But in these papers, we analyze the emotional aspect, we analyze the the psychological effects on the participants of the whole border crossing and people who have been a victim to the demarcation of the physical boundaries. But when I was looking at Shubhi's work, and she had shared some of her research work with me as well, when I was looking at Shubhi's work, I realized that her work has a very different perspective. And I wanted to bring this to our students because some of my students are fascinating. I mean, some of their observations and their perspectives are really fascinating, and I wanted to introduce them to this world where they understand that with their training in geography, one of the subjects that we have, and a popular subject again at JT, political science, very popular at JT, history and education, all these students who have studied the students who have studied these subjects at the undergraduate level, I just wanted to introduce to them this idea that you can combine all the different subjects that you're studying and come up with the new areas of study and new areas of research. So that's the reason why I wanted Shubhi here, and she does come to India. She's a close friend for just sharing with my students, and we'll try and pull her to the college sometime. Her hometown is basically Kanpur, but she has had a very exponential growth, very extraordinary career. She started doing her masters from Kanpur. Then she goes on to join international studies. It's named as CPOD. I think Shubhi will be able to expand on that. It's called CPOD from JNU. It's a international studies and disarmament center for international studies, and then she earns a PhD on border studies. Then she moves on to the University of Vienna. She has been teaching there, and the papers that she is offering over there is popular geopolitics and border and bordering practices. And she's attached with the Department of South Asian, Tibetan, and Buddhist Studies. Meanwhile, she has pursued a second master's, which is in, I believe, global studies, global migration studies. Yeah, and she simultaneously she's also engaged with as a social scientist, and she is engaged with this very prestigious institute called YASA, the International Institute of Advanced System Analysis, which is placed in Vienna, Austria. And she's also working with Belmont Forum, that is funded by an organization called Phoenix, and they study the international climate migration. And before moving to Vienna, she was teaching at the Kalandi College in at the Department of Geography, and she has had Shubhi's passport is this thick, I believe. She has a very thick passport. She has traveled almost the entire of Europe in the past 4 5 years. And before that, she has made several presentations. She was in Japan at the Hokkaido University. She has made presentations at Moscow State University, Russia. Then this is Jagiellonian. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly. Jagiellonian University in Poland. And I also remember you going to Bangladesh for a while. Yeah, because she bought me gifts, so I remember that as well. So it's a very impressive career. She has been published at several international institutes and by several international journals, and she has been making these presentations, engaged with research work. Currently, she's also working on the India-Nepal border, and I'll let Shubhi expand on that. Her CV is so dense that it's difficult to delineate it all. So I'll pass it over the mic to Shubhi now, and so we will just listen to Shubhi now, and Shubhi, I think you can take over.
Thank you, Nuri, for such a kind introduction, and thank you, Sneha, for taking the initiative and joining. And I also want to thank all the students to take out time on this weekend afternoon and come to the lecture. I see some 45 people are there in this meeting, and it is a lot, because usually here, even in my master's class, we hardly have handful of students because people don't enroll themselves here. But anyway, yes, some people say that my CV is very scattered. I've done everything under the sun, but Nuri, you were really kind to talk about it in a very positive sense. So yes, like she said, I started from Kanpur, but like all of you, I also had aspirations, and I think that drove me. And then, by everyone's grace, I've been getting some opportunities, and then I'm here. But today, I'm not going to talk about my journey. Maybe some other day. I'll talk about Borderscapes. So, before I move to my presentation, I have shared something in the chat box. Maybe some of you must have joined late, may not see it. So I'll share it again. And Nuri, I just wanted to ask, has the principal also joined? I would like to thank her also in case she's here,
Uh,
or the
no,
convener
she's engaged with some work and she might join in between at
in
some point.
between.
If she does, I'll let you know.
Okay, so but my regards to all the members who are faculty members who are here and have joined. Anyway, I'll just start sharing my presentation so that I finish in time and you guys can go for lunch and I can go for breakfast. Nuri, can you share the Mentimeter code in the chat box so that I
Huh.
can have a small round with students? Oh, some of them have already filled it. Nice.
Because I shared it earlier as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Okay. So for those who are new to this, you just have to click on the link and answer the question. So my question is, borders are what? So there are 5 options. You have to fill what you feel like. This is just an icebreaker, and then we'll figure out in the presentation what it really is.
We're waiting for the results.
No, can you see my screen?
We can.
Can you see the voting poll there?
We only see the title page.
Just a second. Can you see it now?
Mm-hmm.
No? Let me pull this down first. Yeah, can you see it now?
Yes, we can.
So yes. Oh, sorry. I was just looking at the polls. I thought everybody else is also able to see. I'm so sorry. So yeah, is everyone done? I'll just take maybe 1 more minute in case you want to vote and you wish to vote on this. Go ahead. All right. I think most of you must have already voted. So as you can see that many of you have voted that it is a geopolitical or political entity. Some have said economic corridor. I think second vote goes to mental and social construct. Then some have also said they are economic corridors, and social exclusion has also been voted. But maximum votes have gone to geopolitical or political entities. And like I said, as we go along my presentation, we'll figure out what borders really are. So, yeah. Well, so borders have evolved. Borders have evolved in the sense that they did not exist in the past. In earlier times or in Middle Ages, we had what is called as frontiers. And what is the difference between a border or a boundary line and a frontier? There's so many words here. For example, we also have borderlands, we have borderscapes, we have so many concepts that have evolved. But we really need to think and we really need to go back a little and understand how did it come into place. So on the left image that you see is an example of a frontier. The white Himalayan mountain range that you see on your left is a frontier. Why? I'll tell you in a while. And the right example that you see of the map or the map of the political map of India that you see on your screens, the image on the right is an example of international boundaries. So the territories that are not part of India are in white. Rest of them are colored in different states. So the international boundary line is something else and frontier is something else. The two terms may be used interchangeably in non-geographical literature or also in non-border study literature, but they really have different connotations. So, on one hand, boundaries are the lines demarcating the outer limit of a state's territory. Frontiers are the zones that separate geographical regions. So this was the difference. And you must have seen in maybe television or serials or somewhere that there were kingdoms in the past. And it was not clearly demarcated. It was not that this ends here and it starts from here. So there were zones in between. Sometimes they were habitable, sometimes people never used to live there. So things like that existed in the past. But as our system evolved, as things or political system in the world evolved, gradually borders came into scene. Also, I want to emphasize this that boundaries and frontiers are not very different from each other, yet they represent the successive stages in the development of the same phenomena, which is border. So how did it all start? Maybe some of you are program students and might have political science or international relations in your course. So you really must be knowing what a nation state is. So a nation state, I will not go into the definition, but there are few characteristics that define a nation state. The first thing is that a nation state is a political entity. Yes, it is. And then it has a government. And government will do what? It will have a population to take care of or to control in a sense. And then this population lives on a territory. And this territory is bounded by a border. And this is how the concept of border is very much attached to nation state. And this is how it evolved. So when nation state concept actually also came into being after Treaty of Westphalia was signed. I will not go into history a lot, but because some of you must have also studied history or might be studying history, Treaty of Westphalia or peace treaty was an important benchmark here. Why? Because the concept of sovereignty was evolved. Sovereignty को हिंदी में शायद संप्रभुता कहते हैं, जिसे it is basically the authority or a rule. And because beyond, if you see at the map, beyond India's territory, the jurisdiction doesn't lie. The legalities and everything, the rules do not apply. So this is what sovereignty applies. So all these concepts, they evolved together and they give meaning to each other. So sorry, after this, as the societies were evolving, uh, the world became really connected in 1990s. How? Because of the advent of globalization. And what is globalization? I think most of you know it really, but what I want to emphasize here is that the world order changed. There was greater connectedness. All the places were connected to each other. I'll give you a small example. Like in olden times, it used to be a big deal if anybody had foreign goods in their house, or maybe your grandfathers or whosoever, maybe great grandfathers, if they had an imported thing, it used to be a big deal. But now, if you look at any of your commodities, anything could be made in China, Thailand, Bangladesh, Japan, or anything. Could be American. For example, the mobile phones or the iPhones that you use, they are all American. So all these things changed. So that led people to think that because there is greater connectedness, we have more cross-border cooperation, and then the permeability of the borders has increased. With permeability, I mean that there is greater connectedness, and then border permit people as well as ideas and so on. So like I said, this was global networking that was going on, and that led scholars to believe that the world has become without borders, and there is kind of economic integration. But there is a problem in this. Gradually, in 1991, disintegration of Soviet Union happened, and there were a lot of states that were created, 11 to 12, I think, if I'm not wrong. So many states, new states were coming into being that people somewhere thought, no, it's not the end of borders. It's not a borderless world anymore. We have a lot many borders. And then also it was the securitization discourse, for example, the 9/11 attack, suddenly everybody started strengthening their borders because of the threats that were there. So people realized that, yes, borders can be open, but at the same time, we have to close the borders at times. And there has to be a filter between so that we can guard our territories. So this kind of notions were going on. And then what happened is we had a French philosopher. His name is Balibar. And this is a book by him, which is Politics and the Other Scene, in which Balibar emphasized about the ubiquity of borders. Or in simple words, I would like to say that he emphasized that borders exist everywhere. In the beginning, this book did not cater much attention, but gradually people started realizing that what he has written really makes sense. Uh, and also, I would like to emphasize this that Balibar also did not just talk about the statist perspective. He also talked about non-statist perspective, non-political perspective that was very important and was not talked about. Another important fact that that Balibar highlighted was the selective permeability of borders. Like I said, just for example, most of you must have made tea. Tea does what? When you boil the tea and then you take a strainer and you strain the tea so that the tea leaves they collect. Similarly, border also used to should act like this mechanism where they can filter what they want them to enter the territory, and they can uh, leave the residue behind, something like that. So I would like to read an excerpt from Balibar's book, which is very much relevant, and that also kind of shaped the discourses on borders. So I quote, for a rich person from a rich country, a person who tends towards the cosmopolitan and whose passport increasingly signifies not just mere national belonging, protection, and a right of citizenship, but a surplus of rights. In particular, a world right to circulate unhindered. The border has become an embarkation formality, a point of symbolic acknowledgement of his social status to be passed at a jog trot. And then he makes a contrast. For a poor person from a poor country, however, the border tends to be something quite different. Not only it is an obstacle which is very difficult to surmount, but it is a place he runs up against repeatedly, passing and repassing through it as and when he is expelled or allowed to join his family, so that it becomes, in the end, a place where he resides. So you have to picture this keeping in mind the migrants. And it's also debated whether a migrant is a legal migrant or an illegal migrant. I have always been giving this example that, for example, if we have some natural calamity or we have some political conflict going on, today I might be a citizen, tomorrow at once I will become a non-citizen. My territory might go away, or I might get stranded. I might have to leave the place and go. So this is how a refugee is made. Like, a refugee is not a refugee by birth. It There are circumstances that lead to it. And somewhere, if you keep this notion in mind, you will be able to make sense of what Balibar is talking about. So again, emphasizing on the ubiquity of borders, or the notion that borders are everywhere, I want to share this picture with you, which shows, this is a cartoon. So this person, can you see? Yeah. So in this cartoon towards the left, you see that people are using WhatsApp or text messages and texting that see you there, okay. And then their phones are tracked. In the second image that you see, cartoon animation that you see towards your right, you see that they are tracking the text messages. And now that they've tracked it, they cache them at some of their transit locations. So this is how he proves his point that borders are everywhere. You never know who's controlling you from where. For example, it is always said that whatever web usage we have, we should always be careful about it. Why? Because you never know who's monitoring you from where. Okay. So another example of borders are everywhere is this walling and fencing game. The image towards my left is of US-Mexico border, and there is a wall that goes. I think it's around 1600 kilometer. And as you know, that Mexico provides laborers, and laborers, they go to United States, and some of them have a contract and then they come back. And because of lack of opportunities, there are many people, many people who would like to go to their neighboring country and work. And also you have to understand that there are a lot of services or a lot of things that these people do, which the Native American population doesn't. So somewhere this relationship signifies that people in the US who are relatively richer rely on these people. Still, there are borders that do not want these people inside. The second example of wall construction or fencing is of Turkey and Syria. I have a student here who's from Turkey. She was telling me that in her childhood, she remembers how her grandmother used to take her to Syria, and now it's so difficult. And previously, she could cross the border even without papers and passport, but now it is impossible to go to the other side. So things like that. And it's not just Turkey, Syria, or US, Mexico. We have so many examples where people are strengthening their borders. Even we always think that India-Pakistan border is heavily militarized and so on and so forth. But when we talk about India and Bangladesh, today, I think maximum of the border has been fenced. And there are electric barbed wires that are there. And in the news, you must have seen that how some people attempted to cross the border and then there were casualties. Also, sometimes there are animals that also get electrocuted because of this fencing. Anyway, that deviates me from the topic, but I'll come back to it. This is an example. This is a picture which is of Sheepall border. Sheepall border is, this picture is from the airport, Schiphol airport. This is in Netherlands, Amsterdam. So here there is no manual person, there is no human being that checks your passport or your visa. You just have to give your biometrics and you have to scan your passport yourself and then you get entry. Why is this done? This is done because there are frequent travelers and there are a lot of bureaucratic formalities and protocols, because of which they usually end up wasting a lot of their time. So, in order to save time, they've installed these machines. And border literature says that these are modern type of borders. There is no human being, there is just technology. So there is also diversification in the type and forms of border. This is what I want to highlight. And what he said, Balibar said in 2002 is so relevant in 2024 even. And now I would, after giving few examples, now I would like to talk about border and bordering. So we all agreed that these were different forms of borders. And we also discussed, and I showed you example about these borders. There is in literature, in border studies literature, there is a shift from borders to bordering. And why is this so? Because it is argued that border is a process. And also here comes the interdisciplinary angle. So earlier, borders were strictly studied by either political geographers or political scientists or governments and so on and so forth. But people from other disciplines hardly thought that border could be a subject matter of their inquiry. But gradually, border studies scholars, they realized that it's in their benefit to integrate social sciences with humanities, and of course with other science subjects as well. There can be integration of that sort as well, but here particularly, where when these two disciplines they come together, they strengthen border studies. Also, like I already highlighted, that status perspective is there. In no sense I mean this, that state borders should be done away with. We have to have borders, but there is a non-status perspective which is equally important to study. And this is where this interdisciplinary angle comes in. Also, if we talk about bordering, it is not just denoting the processual shift in the discipline, but it also highlights the pragmatic and critical stance. And what is pragmatic and critical stance? The practical aspect of it, the crossing of the boundary, the transcending of the boundary, these things. And the critical aspect is uh, places where we have unnecessarily installed borders and they are doing less good, or they are doing more harm than what it should. So the functionality of border comes into being. What functions do they play? So this is, by looking at bordering, we could have a different perspective altogether. And that is why nowadays you will see that in literature people talk more about bordering than borders. Also, border is an entity while bordering is a practice. So you have to look at the practice of it. How are borders reified, or how are borders established? This is the main focus now. Earlier, it was always seen as a line that divides two countries or two polities. And like I said in my introductory slide, that one jurisdiction ends and the other starts. But it's much more than this. Also, somewhere the concept of border denoted fixity, that borders are fixed in nature. But bordering shows that no, they are not fixed, they are quite dynamic in nature. And how we'll figure it out, I will prove my point shortly. Also, before I go to different epistemologies, I also want to say this, that somewhere the normal things or the everyday life was nowhere talked about in the literature. It was always high politics, interstate negotiation, diplomacy, so on and so forth. So somewhere there was a cultural turn that was taking place in this discipline. Do not confuse with this. This is just talking about the subject matter of borders. And this is part of my doctoral thesis, where I identified that there are 5 P's of borders. Politics, of course, yes, politics is the foremost. And like most of the political scientists will agree with me that there's nothing outside of political gauge. Like we are born, and as people, as citizens, as non-citizens, we are political. Nobody can say that they are apolitical. So politics is part and parcel of us, and hence it is also an important part of borders. We can't do away with it. Second is place. Border is always associated with some place. And I will argue later that it can also be ideational, it can also be an idea in the head, but still it has some element of place involved. And that is also an important subject matter to look at. The second thing is people. Who is affected by borders? It is people who are affected by borders. And it is people who have to cross the border. It is people who have to negotiate about the borders. And hence, it is also an important constituent of border literature or border studies. The next 2 points are very important. They are about perspective and performance. So, you all must have always given this example that the glass is half full or the glass is empty. That is about perspective. But here you see two images. That here this person says that no, this is 3. No, this person says no, this is 4. Actually, I am also confused whether this is 3 or 4. But yes, this is perspective. So if you look at a problem from one angle, it appears to be different. And if you look at it from another angle, it is different. So it's not about being right or wrong always. For instance, why I say this. So if you look at migrant crisis, if you look at refugee crisis, it's not about who is wrong. Countries will protect their borders. But what about people? Where will they go? It's about their habitability. It's about their habitation. It's about their environment. It's about their life. So these things. So in border studies, it is argued that we should not just look at borders like a state, right? We also have to look at borders from the border itself. So location and perspective both have to be combined together to understand the dynamics. This is very philosophical for undergraduate students, but imagine yourself to be standing on a borderline. Now you can see towards your right, there is another territory, towards your left, there is another territory, and you have a different perspective altogether. And now imagine a second scenario where you are, for example, standing. Let's take the example of India Pakistan. It's very hypothetical, but let's take it. Many people go to Wagah border. Maybe some of you have already gone there. But many people go to Wagah border and they take pictures, and also other even other borders where they keep one leg on the other side and then they post pictures because it's something for them. It's a matter where they think that okay, one leg is in this territory, the other leg is in this territory. So similarly, if you imagine that now you are in India and then you look at the border, then you only see that this side we have one country, which is Pakistan, and this is yours. But imagine yourself to be standing on border and then you are looking at both the side, then you can see that gives you a very different perspective. So you have to disassociate yourself in order to look at both the sides. This is what I meant. So perspective is very important, which is also which as a concept can also be used when you talk about literature and borders and or literary texts. So this is an really key point here. Before I move on, I have a small short video to share with you. I think this is not playing. Just a second. Maybe I incorporated a video from YouTube. Maybe I'll play it directly from it. I'm so sorry for this. Meanwhile, if you have some questions, just keep them ready. So yes, before I play this video, I would like to say this, that this is about symbolic borders. How borders are also symbolic. Can you see the video, Noori?
We can see the
Yes, ma'am.
YouTube.
Yes, ma'am.
Can see the video, or should I start playing it?
Go ahead and play it. The audio is not accessible.
Okay, maybe I'll share it with you, Noori. Then can you just play it? Because it was very much there, and I played the slides before, but somehow I don't know,
You have to
stopped working.
you can plug off your headphones and try once more.
Yes. Oh yes. Is it better?
Oh, still not audible.
Oh, I don't know what went wrong. So basically, I think I will talk about it. So this, the picture that you see on my screen. Am I sharing my screen?
We still see the YouTube.
Uh-huh. Technology.
Huh. Now the presentation is visible.
Yeah, I will describe what it is. So I was talking about symbolic boundaries or symbolism, border symbolism. So this is an example of a relic boundary. What is a relic boundary now? Something which remains from the past. So what you see on my screen is the famous Berlin Wall. So this Berlin Wall, as you know, that in 1990s, I think, yes, it was people themselves. So this wall separated East Germany from West Germany. And these two places were entirely different from each other. And there were small gates, and people could only go. And one side, it was somewhere, what do you call, people were more secular in nature, the people had different thought in their head, and then on the other side, because of the wall, the society was entirely different. And then people one day decided that they no longer want this wall, and they themselves broke this. So people from both the side, they gathered whatever they could, like hammers or whatever they could, and then they broke this wall, and that is how there was unification in Germany, no, sorry, Berlin, and this wall still stands. And this is now a tourist destination. So I was just wondering that maybe people have already worked on this before, but border can also be looked at from tourism perspective. I have another example of this. In my class, I always tell students that there is this shrine called Chamli Yal at India-Pakistan border. So this shrine of Chamliyal was separated because of the drawing of the boundary line. So one part of the shrine is in India, and then the other part is in Pakistan. And people on both the sides, they celebrate the same kind of festivals related to this shrine. And so there is this एक मान्यता है वहां पर कि जो the water of the well that they take, that is like a prasad to them. And people from Pakistan, they send chadar on this shrine, while people in India, they send that water, which is holy water for the local community. They send it to the other side, and this is an exchange happens between border security forces and Pakistani rangers. And this kind of exchange happens even till date. Even today, this happens. So in spite of having a very close border or very heavily militarized border, such type of things are there. And people, every year we have festivals also there. And जो जिसे कहते हैं मेला लगता है, there is a fair, and then people from on both the side, they're celebrating, but they can't visit the shrine. So there is one shrine here, the other shrine here, and got separated by the border. Now there's a joke about it, that they say this, that the head is here while the body has gone to the other side. So things like that. So you can see the manifestation of borders in different forms. So not just like, the point remains that it's not just a boundary line, it can be many things. So after this, I want to talk a little bit about border perspective. Border performance. What is a performance? Performance can be a drama, a play that you look at, a singing performance, anything. So something where some art form or some act is being performed in front of you. That kind of visual or audio, somewhere your senses are also involved when you look at performances. So the concept of performance is very important when we have to look at the variety in border. And this is where we can link Borderscape with literature and with arts. And this is what I'm going to talk about now. So also, when we talk about border performance, there is this repetition of act that is seen. And what is that? Have you heard about Wagha-Atari border between India and Pakistan? Must have. And if you have not, then I would request you to go back and look at YouTube and just Google Wagha-Atari border, the change of guard ceremony. And in that change of guard ceremony, every day this happens in the evening. The Pakistani soldiers and the Indian army people, they dress up, and they are very tall people. They are selected for this job itself. They go, they shake hand, and then there's change of guard, and then they sing patriotic songs, and there are slogans, Bharat Mata Ki Jai and Pakistan Zindabad, and so on and so forth. And there are a lot of people who go and visit such sites. And then people are also, they have feeling of hyper patriotism there, and they are singing and celebrating their own country and also trying to outdo each other. So this is also performance, and this is done every day. So my point here is that in order to establish something, you need to repeat it again and again. And that is how political boundaries, they operate. You have to repeat the act. It's not just that you tell them that, okay, this is the border and you have to be inside it. No, there has to be militarization. There has to be walling. This is from status perspective. So there is repetition of act every day. Also, borders are enacted. And this is where performance come into picture. Sometimes there are also dramatic acts. Like I already gave you the example of Wagha-Atari border. So even in performances, it is very important to look at the non-status perspective. And how will you look at it now? So for that, I have another slide, which is next, which talks about performance. So this is basically a Ford car. And some of you must have read about Fordism, but that has nothing to do with this. But it has, but it is not relevant here. So this person called Romero did what? He's a Mexican person. And in the picture, what you see again is Mexico and United States, this border. And then this person, this is an art installation, by the way, what you see on my screen. And this is Ford car. So what he did is, so there is an important cloth, a very famous cloth that is produced in Mexico, which has this drawing or this art on it. He pasted the fabric, the Mexican fabric, on this Ford car, and then he drove it from Mexico City to Tijuana border and installed his art there. And can you see the front wheels of the car? They are jutting inside the ground. Why is this so? So this picture has a lot of meaning. And why is this happening? So you must have read in the news maybe that a lot of Mexicans, they use bunkers to cross the border illegally. And I'm saying this word illegal with a lot of caution because in literature it is questioned that are they really illegal? The legality and illegality is debated. But again, coming back to my point, so the this depiction where the car is jutting inside the ground shows that it is digging a hole, and it is right at the border this art installation happened. So somewhere art has always been contesting the conventional things, and it has always been a weapon to question the mainstream things that are happening in the society. So this art installation is one example, and there have been people in border studies that have studied art and tried to understand what are the different connotation, how do people feel about it. Now coming to the concept of borderscapes. What are borderscapes? This is a very important question. Like I already mentioned before, that after Balibar's book and assertion about borders being everywhere, there was a slight sociological or cultural turn that people were witnessing in border studies. But it was asked that can cultural production be more than a side issue in borders? Can it not be the mainstream focus of border studies? This was a big question mark. And what is borderscapes? So, like, it's not just a portmanteau. Portmanteau is when two words are joined together. So it's not border plus scapes. No, it has deeper meaning to it. So if you go back to the etymology of the word borderscape, people say that it is also maybe somewhere inspired by Arjun Appadurai, which the picture of the person that you can see on my screen. He in his book Modernity at Large defined 5 types of scapes: ethnoscapes, mediascapes, and so on and so forth. So there were different types of scapes that he defined. But somewhere I agree that this concept is inspired by Appadurai, but borderscapes is very different. It is a way to understand the border dynamics, and you have to understand that the things that I've been discussing is like a progression from border to from frontier to boundaries to border and then to bordering. And this bordering, which was about processual shift, somewhere inspired people to coin this new term called borderscapes. There is no concrete definition of the term, but it has a lot many interpretation. Like I said, it is a lens or it is a perspective of looking at borders in its variety. And also it is very interdisciplinary nature. So with these characteristics, you can understand the concept, but likewise, there is no quote unquote definition of the term borderscapes. And it has been used by different scholars where they have defined it in their own way. Like I said, it has interdisciplinarity. So you have anthropology people doing it, sociologists doing it, literature people doing it. And there is an important field called border poetics. And I think Noori ma'am will share 1 or 2 readings. I will share it with her. And maybe if you have extra time, she will introduce you to that concept. But my point here is that different fields are coming together and studying it. And it's not just about the visible manifestation of borders. It's also about the symbolism of borders, the ideational aspect of border, the ideas of border, and how are borders constructed in the minds of the people. That is also very important. Like I said, they also question the fixity of borders. Are they really fixed? No. I think somewhere border travels with us in our mind. Like, for example, I might be sitting here 6,000 kilometers from you, but my identity is an Indian person. And somewhere I carry that with myself in my head always. So things like that. Also, Borderscape talks about the shaping of the border. Shape not as in the walling or the structure that we discussed before, but how is it materializing that, and also scaping of it. So it also emphasizes on the practices through which the imagined border is established and experienced as real. This is very important. So somewhere, the concept of border studies, Borderscape, which was introduced in early 2015, somewhere around 2015, revamped border studies on three axes. One is methodology. The other thing is the knowledge base of border, which is epistemology, and also the concept of border itself, which is the ontology of border. It also liberated border studies from territorial subjectivities somewhere. So this was an important work done by this concept. And of course, it gave you a critical analytical lens of looking at the problems associated with borders by bringing people in the picture. Also, it talked about somewhere, it also introduced the concept of border aesthetics. And this is where you as literature scholars or literature students can make sense of it. So border aesthetics is what? Aesthetics usually we think is all about art and culture. It is much beyond that. Art and literature are tools of resistance, like I already mentioned it before. And the performative aspect of it makes it more relevant. And it is Borderscape through which you can understand this feature of literature and art. Also, there is also global cultural flow of these things. So it is not very static in nature. It also flows, and that also you can understand through the concept of borderscapes. And there are several examples like art, cinema, literature, like poems also, somewhere said. So these things become your object of study, and then through which you can understand the variety of border. Also, they say that when, as a reader, when you are indulging in literature, you somewhere disassociate yourself to look at the clear picture of borders. And this defamiliarizing is done only when you look at the cultural production part. And there are 5 things through which literature makes sense, and literature and borders are connected. One is through representation. Literature might represent the border realities. Might, I'm saying might, not necessarily always, because somewhere it's a work of fiction at times. But yes, it might be a representation. It is a performative act. It is also narration. It talks about, there's a book, I think, by Appadurai called Nation and Narration. So I would highly recommend you to look at it if you're really interested in the topic. It's also about imagination, border imagination. So everything starts with an imagination, which also you can make sense in your literary text when you indulge in them. It's also about visualization. It's not just restricted to imagination. It is also about visualization. Also, there's this, I have put this picture of a kaleidoscope. So somewhere I also thought that I would bring this discussion here, that borderscape gives you a gaze to grasp the variations in border like a kaleidoscope. There's doing and undoing of things, and that is why bordering. So there is deterritorialization, reterritorialization, debordering, rebordering, right? So construction, deconstruction, these things are happening. And just like a kaleidoscope gives you different patterns and different colors and different things, they come together, and there's a progression. So similarly, this also gives you an important gaze of looking at things. So conceptually, borderscape is really important. I will quickly wrap this up in next 5-7 minutes. Just please bear with me for some more time. Now comes the question, how did I use this concept? My training has been in geography, and how did I use literature, and how did I study borders? So most of you must have heard about this person called Sadat Hasan Manto. Manto has written short stories, and his short stories are on partition literature. And like I said, that border is all about interdisciplinarity. One important aspect is to go back to history and understand how were borders created. What we see today is a result of a progression. So in order to see that, we need to go back to history, and history is important. So my interest was India, Pakistan, of course, during my doctoral thesis. And one of the aspect of it was to understand the manifestation of borders through Manto's work. And Manto wrote many stories on partition, and some of them, selected ones, they were part of my PhD inquiry, doctoral thesis. For example, Toba Takes In. So Toba Takes In is a very poignant tale of Bishan Singh Bedi, the main protagonist of it. And Bishan Singh Bedi is an inmate of an asylum. And suddenly, and also I want to highlight this, while researching, I found this, that some of Manto's stories were heavily inspired, not just inspired, I mean, they had borrowed from real life experiences, and not just experiences, but occurrences. For example, documents, the historical data and archives, they suggest that there was an exchange of the inmates of prison as well as the inmates of asylums between India and Pakistan in 1949 and also 1950. People suddenly thought, no, borders have been drawn, and since we are exchanging most of the things, and Ismat Chugtai has also written that, she writes that even ink pot, tables from the government offices, these things were also exchanged after the borders were drawn. So it was not just partitioning of the people or the territory, it was also of the people, of the minds, of the things. And here we see that it was also a partitioning of the inmates of prison and also asylum. So this is a very point. I will not go into the detail of it. If you have not read, it is hardly 2, 3, 4, 5 pages short story. If you have not had the chance, I would highly recommend you to go back and look at Manto's literature. And these, even if in your bedtime, you can just read one story and go off to sleep. But I will give you a warning that the stories are not always pleasant. They are really, they have they are a bit sad because they talk about partition. So my argument in my doctoral work was that partitioning itself is an act of bordering. And it is also, and I also somewhere talk about the quotidian life of the people, the everyday life in which borders percolated and hence borders were created. And now even, so now the interstate relationship between India and Pakistan are not so good because of the wars, because of n number of geopolitical reasons. But somewhere there is also a mental construct. Whenever we have cricket match, it's a big deal, right? So similarly, so these things I refer to literary text and tried to invoke various border concepts, especially borderscapes, to underline the bordering practices. The other examples that I took were Kholdo and Dog of Titwal, and there were 2, 3 more which I'm not getting into detail because most of you must have not read these, so it will not make sense to you. But this is how I use literature to understand the borderscapes. And this is where I end my presentation. Thank you for your attention, and I really welcome if you have any question, I would be happy to answer them. So over to you, Noori.
Thank you, Shubhi. This was quite intense, even for me. So, but I'm happy to understand that entire concept of border. But I would like to welcome some questions first. Students, if you have questions, please unmute yourself.
Good afternoon, ma'am. Ma'am, thank you for precious time. I have a one query. That is that you have said that day by day people are strengthening their borders, like of USA and Mexico. But what I want to say that is we can really do in this sort of technology and all is we can really strengthen our border. Like we have a multinational companies around the world, and they went and invest in different countries. So is we can really strengthen our border with so much of technologies in this contemporary world.
Question is that with technology, can we strengthen our borders? If I'm not wrong.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes. So, Parthvi, I think, of course, but this is already happening. So now, even like I keep giving this example because United States is a developed state.
आए
Can you
तो
just mute yourself, someone?
आया नहीं है कोड
Kajal,
Kajal
can you mute
Tolkar,
yourself?
please mute yourself.
Yeah. So, yes, of course, but technology is being used. People are being tracked. And this is how they are erecting multiple borders. There are borders within borders, there are layering of borders. You don't even know who is tracking you and for what purpose. So it's not just always that and why are then terrorist things happening if they are tracking everyone? It is always this is what the literature says, that it is always that the innocent people get caught in these acts. Also, there is also, if you talk about US Mexico border, uh, there is human trafficking that happens. Why? Because during winters there is this river called mm, I'm forgetting the name. Anyway, so there's this river that there's a transboundary river between Canada and United States, and because of the cold temperature, it freezes. And when it freezes, it is very difficult. So nobody really, there's no, and you know, Canada US border is a very friendly border. It's not at all militarized. It is not at all fenced. It's an open border. So what people do is they understood this, that during cold months, it is nobody is there. There's no border patrolling that is happening. So they used to do uh, transfer people and trade. There was flesh trade that was happening there. So gradually people got to know about it, and then so technology is already there with us. When if you ever get a chance to travel, you will see that it's everything is biometric these days. Your thumbprint, your iris is scanned, and then you are given permission. So it's very unlikely that somebody who's not you will be able to enter borders without the permission or without the legal documents. So these are the institutions of borders which are there in different forms. And like I go back to what I discussed in the beginning about Balibar. So borders for whom actually? So rich people. So for us, like for Indian citizen, we need visa whenever we have to travel. And there are very few countries that are visa free for Indians. On the contrary, there are few countries that have really very strong passport, Japanese passport, US passport, Sweden passport, so on and so forth, n number of countries, because they don't need a visa at all. They can travel just like they plan a holiday and they pack their bags, they buy the ticket, they go. It's just as from Allahabad, you're going to Delhi, not a big deal, right? So borders for whom exactly? And to go back to your question, technology is there and very much there, be it any corner of the world. Every country is investing in strengthening borders. And it is rightly so in some of the other aspect, but when it comes to control, the control is restricted to people because ideas are flowing anywhere through internet. Does that answer your question, Partvi?
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, I just gained one more theory from your explanation that we as a India believe in the concept of Vasudeva Kutumbakam. So, is there any worthy in today's world to believe in our neighbors and have that concept in our mind to go back at that ancient times where we used to live with the with the love and peace?
That's a good question. So, Vasudeva Kutumbakam, now that is also the motto of our country these days. It is again back. But see, you have to understand that there are different dimensions to this. Of course, like I also talked about cosmopolitan idea, and it has to be like that. But somewhere you have to respect the fact that the political structure is also there. For example, just imagine hypothetically that everyone, yes, we are one world. But again, I go back to this political concept that we have state. ठीक है, अगर भारत है या इंडिया है, अगर इंडिया मतलब सारी चीजों को मर्ज कर दो, इफ यू मर्ज देम टुगेदर, डोंट यू थिंक दैट इट विल बी वेरी डिफिकल्ट टू मैनेज थिंग्स? जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल हम कहीं पर भी जाते हैं, वी हैव टू गिव आवर आइडेंटिटी इन द फॉर्म ऑफ आधार कार्ड और पासपोर्ट और वॉट एवर. तो somewhere we are what? Citizens of India, and that is why we avail few things. There are few advantages of us, right? But अगर ऐसा नहीं होगा तो बहुत ज्यादा हौच पौच नहीं हो जाएगा, बहुत ज्यादा कंफ्यूजन नहीं क्रिएट हो जाएगा? हाउ विल वी रेगुलराइज थिंग्स, हाउ विल वी रेगुलेट थिंग्स? So
Yes,
at
ma'am.
one level, at the cultural level, that is true. But when it comes to organization, when it comes to organizing things, or not, I don't want to use the word controlling, but organizing is a better word, or managing things, when managing our people. So how will we separate us from them? Then, and this is what bordering is. कहीं ना कहीं they are, I'm not saying that you have to do away with borders, but they should be soft borders. And with soft borders, Vasudev Kutumbakam and soft borders can both exist together and simultaneously. So we will welcome people, they can travel to us, but it's not that without legal procedure we can make anyone the citizen of a country. No, there is legality involved, there is politics involved, and it has to be there. This is how we have framed it, and it's not just about we, it's about the entire world. Everybody today, United Nations recognizes so many countries, and there are few countries that are fighting to become one. Why? Because this is the structure that we've been following. But yes, this is not the only way of looking at things. There are alternate perspectives as well. Does that answer your question, or was it too much?
No, ma'am. I got that. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Do we have any more questions?
A very good afternoon, ma'am.
Good afternoon. Who are you? Introduce yourself. I can only see Vivo.
Okay, this is Sanjana Pandey.
Hello, Sanjana.
Yes, ma'am. How can we make our career in border studies? What are the approaches?
Mm-hmm. So that's it, or do you have any second part to this question?
That's it, ma'am.
That's it. So see, you are undergraduate students. At this level, I would suggest you to take small projects, and then you can indulge in the subject more. But when it comes to career trajectories, so for example, be it most of your teachers, most of your, I think 99% of your teachers must be a PhD holders themselves. So research journey is all about your own liking. If you like doing something, it's always like whenever we choose a topic, our guides or our supervisors, they always tell us that do what you like. And that liberty I had when I joined JNU, that although I was into geography and I was also very good in physical geography, but somewhere my liking was always towards human geography, social geography, political aspect, and so on and so on. So there I got this liberty where I could choose a topic which was of my liking and that had these aspect to it. And also, it was not something which was out of the blue. It is not just Shubhi Misra who's doing borderscapes and literature and borders. There are many people in the world who are doing it. That is one part of it. To answer your second part, what are the job prospects? So I would say that research is a very lengthy process. So first you complete your undergraduation, then you do masters, then you write your NET examination or JRF or whatever. Then JRF gives you some independence, financial independence, and then you enroll yourself in some university, you do a PhD, and then either you go into research or you go into teaching. This is the lengthy process. So see, to be very practical about it, I would suggest that in case you want an early career, then it's better to prepare for other examination and join some services or whatever. Like you can write n number of examinations happening. But in a country like ours, where we still have to take care of our social security, I think livelihood is really very important. So it's not that I'm discouraging you all to not go into border studies. You can, but you have to be very patient, just like the research journey is. And in terms of career, you can either go into academics or into research. But with research also, you have to constantly be on your toes. It's not that you write an exam, you pass the exam, and then it's good to go and you will be earning all your life. No, all your life you have to apply for grants and come up with innovative ideas and projects. Pitch your idea to people who give money. Like there are different organizations that if they like your research idea, they give you money to do it. And that is how you earn your living. So it's not an easy path. Nevertheless, if you have time and patience and interest, I would not discourage you, because it is all about interest. So it is very individual in nature. And like Noori said, that I was teaching at one of the colleges at the Delhi University. My circumstances changed and hence I came here. So had I not been here, I might be dealing with my students and teaching them the syllabus that was prescribed by the university. But I was fortunate enough that I came here and then I started exploring more and I got these avenues. So yeah, you can explore. And also I would encourage all of you to apply abroad. Earlier Noori wanted me to talk about these things, but somewhere I feel I'm not the right person for it. But don't hesitate at all. I mean, your teachers are there, and it really feels nice when we see especially people from India, and not just India, from my own state, who come here and do so well. So you just have to be driven. And the second thing is that you have to have your goals right. Just think about what you really want to do, and then there are resources and everything is arranged. You have to make an attempt towards it.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you so much.
Any more questions?
Hello, ma'am. A very warm good afternoon. Myself,
Good afternoon.
Pallavi Rai, and my question is that how and in what way border study is helping to flourish English literature?
So, like I said, Pallavi, is this the question, or you want to ask? There's a second part to it.
So, ma'am, this is the only question I want to
Okay.
ask.
Yes. So, there are a lot many scholars who are studying their own literature, because had to present it today. I yesterday came across an article which was on Norway-Russian border, and they had studied the border through the concept of borderscapes. And this scholar was based in Sweden, and he has studied Russia and Norwegian border through this concept. And it's not just one localized phenomena. So it's also about, see, positionality. That person is based somewhere, and so हम अपनी चीजों को, आसपास की चीजों को ही देखकर इंस्पिरेशन लेकर तभी एक रिसर्च आइडिया बनाते हैं. Similarly, like I also gave this example of US Mexico. Art, literature, and these things are used by Mexicans, and not just one or two scholars. There are so many scholars who are doing it. Art, music, cinema, literature, everything is being studied, and not just in South Asia, but in Southeast Asia, in European world, in North America, and also South American context. So it also depends. And if you are really interested in a field, and if you start doing little research, everything is at just a click away from your, you can access it from your phone or computers. If you start researching, you'll find there are several links. And Noori ma'am is also writing a paper, and I think she will discuss about it once it's done. So it's also about art and culture and borderscapes. So yeah, this is what my take is. It's not just restricted to South Asia, and it's happening in different parts of the world. And because I'm not into hardcore literature, I'm not the right person to give you references of it. But for example, I'll give my own example. It's not just Manto that I dealt with in my research work. I also looked at Khushwant Singh's novel called Train to Pakistan, where I talked about mobility and borders, or immobility and borders. So जितनी important mobility है, उतनी ही important immobility भी है. That borders render you immobile. They make you become static. They make you become static, but as a concept, it is very dynamic. So things like this. Maybe it is sounding very confusing at the moment, but this is what the interpretation is. The next thing is, I also analyzed the other. You can so it there is a lot variety of literature that is there. It depends on which literature are you exposed to, which one do you like, and how are you able to locate the instances of border and then connect dots, right? It could also be cartoon. It could also be serial. I recently reviewed a research paper from a very reputed journal called Journal of Borderland Studies. And this girl had studied daily soaps, Pakistani daily soaps and their popularity in India. And this is how she somewhere her argument was, this woman or this man's argument, because this was a blindfolded peer review. So the argument was that there is an alternate space which is very different from the true border which is there on the ground. So it depends. Your text or your source can be anything. Is that okay, Pallavi?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Any more questions? Okay, I guess you've been able to quell a little bit of curiosity of my students. And although I'm pretty sure they'll have a lot more questions when I meet them the next week. Uh, Even I have so many questions, so I'll be discussing them with you over the phone call. Uh, Thank you so much, Shubhi, for this wonderful talk. Thank you for allowing us your precious time and explaining all these important concepts. There's still since it's a very dense field and a very important research that you're doing, a lot of concepts we still need to find out more about and elaborate a little bit more, expand on them a little bit more. But I just wanted to give my students a slight perspective that there are so many different fields that they can take up if they wish to pursue research work or higher studies. Like you give the example of these daily soaps. I have met people who have been studying comic books. And we know in one of the universities in US, they have been studying Korean pop culture, and that's a very huge thing in US right now. And we had a person a couple of years back who was involved with the Korean pop culture. So there are so many different avenues that are open to us, even for very regular humanities students. We can club so many different concepts, and we can elaborate on them and discuss them and look at it from a different perspective to understand our societies better, because humanities and social sciences is all about understanding the social processes as well as the human tangents and the emotional tangents of a certain idea and the literature that is produced. So I thank you so much. People are not present here, but this is a recorded session. I have put it on my own channel. I'll download it and put it on the college's channel. So I think I'll make it available to you as well. I would officially like to thank our principal for providing this opportunity. We have a wonderful person there who is always open to all the ideas, and she's very supportive. Unfortunately, I did not see her joining in at any point. I guess work has kept her busy. I also would like to thank our convener, Dr. Deepshikha Banerjee. She has not been keeping well for the past few days, and she was very much interested, and she would have stayed throughout the lecture. And she's basically from philosophy department, and she has been made the convener of the English department. But she's very much interested in understanding new concepts, and I'm pretty sure she would have given us her blessings as of now. uh, I also thank my students. My undergraduate batch is a wonderful, wonderful lot, and my heart goes out to so many of them. They're so keen. This is the first batch that I've had at Jagataran in the past 5 years, where all my 3 years, BA 1, 2, and 3, they're all super interested, very diligent, very sincere, and they all have a voice. That's what I like about them so much, that they all have important questions to ask. They listen, and they have their arguments. So thank you, children, for joining us. Sneha also had some work, but that was a last moment thing, and she stuck with us the entire time. Thank you so much. I think we can close this session now.
Yeah, before I say bye to everyone, I just want to tell students that my association with Noori has been for more than a decade now, and she has always inspired me. You all already know that she is the Fulbright scholar and one of the most sought after positions which a researcher can think of. And I've always admired her for the kind of work she does, and she has inspired me in many ways. And also, I look forward to her constructive criticisms. Whenever I write something, I always send it to her, because somewhere I feel it's also that our research interests also align in many ways. This is also one,
I've
and
had
also
my
I
interest in diaspora. So diaspora and border studies are very much aligned. And in fact, Shubhi has inspired me to look at many different perspectives on my own research work. So yes, that's that. Sorry to cut
So
you in between.
yes, yes, no, no. So yeah, it's an emotional moment for me as well, and I'm really glad. And to the dear students, I really want to say, like, I see myself few years back, or maybe more than a decade back, I was like you all. I was also an undergraduate student in a smaller town, which is like, in terms of education, Allahabad is doing much more better things than Kanpur is. But it's not, you just have to dream big and you have to be driven. This is the underlining thing that I really want to focus before I say bye to you all. That please don't think small, think about big things. And there are ways to go about it. Take help from your teachers, from principals, from anyone. Like, everyone has networks. Some way, just reach out to people. Don't hesitate from reaching out to people. Maybe you get a no. Write to people. They will not reply to you, but maybe 1 in 10 people will reply to you, and you will get your way out. So just keep trying and trying, and you have to dream big. That's it. That's the bottom line that I really want to emphasize, that dream big, and everything is achievable in this world. With
Okay,
that,
thank
I
you.
just say bye.
Yeah. Thank you, Shubhi, and thank you, children. See you on Monday.